Welcome back to the LoCo Experience podcast. I'm here today with Jack and Ginger Graham. And Jack is a former athletic director for CSU. He is a business executive with a great history, as well as a former star quarterback at CSU. And Ginger is one of my favorite people, as well as the owner-operator of the Ginger and Baker multiplex here in Fort Collins. So I guess first, Ginger, thanks for coming back around, and thanks for bringing Jack.
Absolutely. I like hanging out with him.
Did you get voluntold for this?
You know, I'm an easy target. I was happy to come, and I'm glad to be here.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
Mr. Ginger Graham was the alternative suggestion I heard there. So
No, just Mr. Jack. You know,
Can we start with,
Mr. Ginger? Yeah.
yeah. Can we start with let's talk about the romance. Like, when did you guys first meet, and how long before the first date?
We met on our first date.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
we did.
blind
You
date.
were set up? Oh, blind date.
Yeah, blind date.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a business partner that Ginger went to business school with,
Okay.
and he was sick and tired of me being miserable, and he said, "I've met a woman who's just as miserable as you are, and I think you ought to meet her." And he described her to me, and I said, sure, but I figured it would never go any further than that, but he gave me her phone number, and so I called him, and
Nice.
I mean, you should tell the story. You always tell it better than I do.
Well, he called. I was perturbed because these two friends from business school, Wendy and Tom, gave Jack my phone number without my permission.
That was not allowed.
Which was not okay with me. But back then there was an answering machine, and the one message was from Wendy. "Hi, I've met him. His name is Jack Graham," because I had been with a group of girlfriends and they were harassing me about not dating. And I said, well, every man I know either works for me or is one of my customers, and so I can't date. And they decided they were going to fix it for me. And so then she called and said, "I have found him. His name is Jack Graham." And the next message on my answering machine was his voice.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought, sounds pretty interesting. So we started trading voicemails, trying to connect. Eventually we had a blind date, and we've never really been apart since then.
Is that right? No other dates?
No.
You just continue your Match.com accounts from there.
You're giving us credit for dating at a younger time, Kurt.
Well, Ginger, you had been never married before?
Never
Is that
married.
True? How
No.
old were you?
I was 40.
Wow.
I was too busy.
Right.
And
well,
it's
you were
really
doing a lot of
hard.
stuff. We talked
Yeah.
about a lot of that stuff.
It's really hard to find a great guy.
Yeah.
And so I waited till I did.
That's I've shared that notion before, is like for middling guys like myself, it's kind of awesome that there's so few awesome guys out there, because we can still get pretty awesome women, but it kind of sucks for humanity that we don't have more awesome guys.
Yes, well, I really was working a lot, traveling all over the world, really didn't date, have interaction with other people, and was really focused on my career.
Yeah.
And it is really more challenging, I think, to find a man who is okay with you being gone all the time, moments notice, working
Especially
20
in
hours
those
a
days.
day.
Right.
Yes, and I don't know that humans have changed very much.
No.
And, to me, the only way to be really successful in your career is to have a partner who both understands it but actively supports it, not just doesn't guilt you or punish you for working hard, but actually actively supports. And so Jack and I have always had that, which is really helpful.
Can you circle me a little bit, Jack? What was your situation in your career at that time, and where were you living and stuff?
Well, we were both living in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was in Palo Alto, and Ginger was in Los Altos Hills. We were both working 20-hour days and traveling 225 days a year, and internationally, and so we were consumed by the work that we were doing. And I had just kind of finished raising my children. I'd gone through a really hard divorce, and I'd sort of sworn the other species off, and said, "I really don't need this headache." And so I wasn't terribly excited about dating and reestablishing a relationship with someone. But, I was really attracted to the description that my friend Tom gave to me about Ginger and what she did. And I said, I can try something. I can try anything once.
Yeah.
And so we hooked up, and I'll never forget, I went to her house to pick her up. which I think she was a little nervous about.
I was
that,
very
too.
nervous.
Right now he's gonna know where I live.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just say, you got to be a gentleman, and that's what gentlemen do. So I went and picked her up, and she ran across the kitchen window, and I saw her, and I thought, oh, she's really short. And then, and oh, she's got red hair. You know, this is going to be fun. And it was. We just, we connected with each other.
Yeah.
Really, really quickly.
Yeah.
We were both going through a hard time then too, not just related to divorce, but both of our mothers. My mother had just passed, and no, my mother hadn't just passed.
She was
just
really
about
sick,
to
though.
pass.
Wow.
And her mother had just been diagnosed with a recurrence of cancer, and we both knew it was really serious.
Yeah.
So we
Wow.
had a lot of fun. We also had a real honest conversation with each other.
Yeah.
So it was a meaningful first date.
Well, that season of caring for your elderly parents is such a interesting testing, and so many of my friends are going through it right now. You guys have probably experienced most of that, and
Yeah, we've both lost both our parents, so
Yeah.
we've been through that, and it's a big transition. And I, even have a good friend this week whose father is in hospice and has taken a turn for the worse, and so it is a big transition in life when your
Yeah,
parents begin to decline.
well, and marching through something hard together is a really bonding experience
It
as well.
is for sure.
And you were both marching through hard things that most people don't understand anyway. Jack, what industry, what kind of business were you in?
I'd been in the reinsurance marketplace for,
Okay.
I don't know, 25, 30 years at that point.
So that's some of the Warren Buffett kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Like he's got a lot of investments in that
I
space.
actually negotiated a handful of transactions with Buffett through my career.
Okay.
But reinsurance is just an arbitrage. It's a way of spreading risk around the world. Insurance companies can only afford to take so much risk, and they lay the rest of it off into the reinsurance market.
Yeah.
And I facilitated those transactions, and it was a great industry. It was unregulated. It's regulated more now than it was then.
Okay.
And the room for creativity was just unlimited.
Oh, fascinating.
And it was a small industry. There were probably 200 reinsurance companies in the world. But in reality, the industry was controlled by about 15 or 20 human beings.
Wow.
And we regulated ourselves in terms of integrity. And boy, you didn't get one strike. You
Interesting.
You had to play by the rules. And
I'm going to want to dig more into that for sure.
it's a great business. I
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah.
I'd never heard of it. He was a treaty reinsurance intermediary, and it's like, what? But it's so logical if you think about an insurance company in California insuring homes. There's a likelihood of earthquake. And so if you're an insurance company and you insure every home and an
Right.
earthquake happens, you're not going to be able to pay your claims. You're going down.
Sure, you don't even want more market share.
No, that's right. And so this way, insurance companies can keep part of that, but sell off the rest of that risk. So in the end, Jack created markets so that when something really bad happens, the
Yeah.
whole world pitches
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Otherwise, no one could recover.
Right. Well, and like thinking about the California fires
Right.
of late, like that signal that insurance companies started pulling out basically probably meant that they weren't able to sell the reinsurance part of it.
Well,
Right. The market
reinsurance-
dried up for the reinsurance element of that.
It really hadn't dried up. It was just getting ridiculously expensive.
Right.
And so the cost of homeowners policies, on the one hand, insurance policies like homeowners policies are heavily regulated by insurance commissioners.
Sure.
The reinsurance market's not regulated, and so they charge the price of freight that they think it needs to be. And so there was a mismatch.
If that goes upside down,
Yeah.
And so
that's like
there's-
the yield curve inverting.
Exactly. It's a massive mismatch, I guess, is the best way to put it. And we're having that same experience in the state of Colorado right now over hail. Hail's become a meaningful catastrophic event.
Yeah, it's how roofing companies stay in business is hoping for hailstorms in some cases.
Well, there's lots of roofing companies out there. that
There's
just
way too
take-
many, maybe.
Well, they take massive advantage of people. And,
Right.
that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah. Interesting. So you're, I guess, probably a innovator as well as a integrity focused kind of a guy in the insurance and reinsurance space. Is that a fair?
Well, there was so much room.
Assessment?
There was so much room for creativity, and I thrived in it because of that. Getting
Yeah.
outside the box and thinking of ways to solve problems that maybe other people hadn't thought of was a lot of fun for me. Coupled to the idea that you just had to trust the people on the other side of the transaction.
Yeah.
because we didn't document things the way we document things today.
Right.
It was a handshake kind of a thing, and you just never let your word be anything less than
What a
perfect.
fascinating thing.
That was fun.
I'm gonna want to zoom back in the time capsule of that. You're fully retired now. Was the athletic director, or maybe you're not? I don't know. You probably have a bunch of little fingers and things, or
Well,
what are you up to?
I don't feel like I'm working.
Okay.
I run. We've got a horse farm, a 200-acre horse farm, and
Okay.
we grow grass hay and we put it up ourselves, and we tend to cattle in the wintertime and the horses year round. And so there's that work to be done. I sit on a couple of boards.
Okay.
That takes some time as well.
Yeah.
And we've always got personal projects going
Yeah.
that require lots and lots of attention.
Plus, he helps at Ginger and Baker in 100 ways.
Necessary help
yeah,
there.
there's so much to be done. But he's involved with the Common Sense Institute, which I think is a really fascinating group based out of Denver. But it's really a group of people who invest in independent research trying to understand the implications of proposed legislation and what it means to the economy and the people of Colorado.
Interesting.
And so legislators often come up with ideas,
Sure.
things, but they don't
Yeah.
know what it's going to mean.
Yeah.
And I had that experience in California. Mine was called the California Council on Science and Technology, and I was on that board. And it did the same thing, but for the science and technology world, advising legislators, if you pass this legislation, here's the potential consequences to the innovative environment, the research environment, which is big in California, all the startup companies in California. And so he's doing that for Colorado, which I think
Interesting.
takes more of his time than he gives it credit for.
Well, I think importantly, it's nonpartisan. So we don't have an agenda. We don't advocate. Rather, we are just committed to providing objective reports to legislators, to the media, and to the public,
Wow.
so that people can make informed decisions.
If you raise the minimum wage to this is
Yeah, here's
likely
the consequences.
or
Yeah,
whatever
so-
those things are.
So many unintended
Yeah.
consequences.
Well, that was frankly we're gonna. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, the first time I heard your name, Jack, was from your daughter, who worked for the sign, not the sign, but the stands company thing.
Oh,
Right,
yes.
What's her name?
Kaylee.
And she came to a training kind of thing that LoCo Think Tank had years ago. And when she heard about what our business model was, she was like, my dad would love this. He would think this is so cool. And so I have to say that before I ever heard about Ginger and Baker, I heard about Jack Graham and how much he would think LoCo Think Tank was cool. So
It is cool. You guys are doing a great
I come
thing.
with a preformed disposition already. So what I wanted to ask also about before we departed. So first, Common Sense Institute. Like, let's talk about unintended consequences. Like, and where this is for Colorado specific.
It
So
is.
what's on the board? And I'm gonna maybe focus on Jack a little bit, Ginger, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll come back to you, but what's on the board in Colorado in the months ahead? And like, what's the circumstance in terms of, like, to me, Trump and Doge or whatever are cutting a lot of stuff. And as a largely libertarian kind of guy, I'm like, yay, go. But there's a ton of like research dollars and nonprofit funding grants and different things like that that are on the chopping block at best or maybe gone. And like, what's going to happen to Colorado's, like, what are the unintended consequences of all these big things that have been happening maybe the last 6 weeks or so? Or
Yeah, and all of that,
3 weeks.
and all of that's happening at the federal level, not the state level, and we tend to focus on state legislative.
But doesn't,
initiatives.
okay, just legislative, not the
Right.
funding, not the revenue
But I
streams.
think it's equally relevant at the federal level, and much of it is common sense and logical in terms of the implications of the decisions that are being made. I think we all love the idea of reducing the size of government.
Sure.
I mean, we're all kind of horrified at over $30 trillion of debt and the debt service that we've got and all of the other costs. So reducing the government is great, in my opinion. Thinking about reducing regulation so that we can bring back more creativity and
More
speed.
growth.
You know, in the state of Colorado, I can be specific about the housing shortage that exists in the state of Colorado, and all of the restrictions that exist,
Yeah.
legal restrictions as well as regulatory restrictions. You think about the issues associated with construction defects in the construction industry, and that's why condominiums and starter homes aren't being built at this point because of the liability that contractors have. I mean, there's an old saying that in a construction project, particularly around condominiums, there's kind of 3 or 4 or 5 phases. There's the concept phase, the design phase, the finance phase, the construction phase, and then the litigation
The
phase.
lawsuit phase.
And it's almost
Yeah.
it's so predictable that it's going to
Well,
happen.
and metro districts are a big problem around Colorado for the same reason right now, right? Like some of them got themselves in a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Understanding understanding the regulations and the laws that are adopted by the state and how they impact an industry like the construction industry, and that the thought by the legislatures is well intended.
Sure.
Let's protect consumers, etc.
Yeah.
But the real implications are far different.
Yeah.
People can't afford to buy homes now.
Yeah.
And it takes years and years and years for projects to come to life. So those sorts of things, again, we don't advocate. We put the information out there and say,
Interesting.
here's what's going to happen if we do this.
Yeah.
And some legislators listen, and some just choose to just keep marching.
So it's a little
in.
bit like the state function of what's that? Like they do the budget kind of. This is
The
what's
Office of Management and Budget.
Yes.
It's very similar, but they pick topics, and actually Jack has brought them up to speak in Fort Collins because they've done specific geography studies as well. They looked at Fort Collins in particular, I think on crime, the Fort Collins study to show, and Fort Collins is doing a great job at addressing crime. And, at Ginger and Baker, I experience almost every day the support from the local police, from the social services, from Outreach Fort Collins. And Fort Collins is a safe community because of smart people doing the right thing and making good choices, but not every city in Colorado has that benefit.
Yeah.
And so they did a study on crime, they've done a study on homelessness, they've done a study on housing, they've done a study on transportation, and they're available to the public. So if people are interested in actually being informed about some of these topics and seeing data.
I like to get my information from Facebook. Thank you very much.
Well, good for you.
I'm teasing.
We just released a report in the last week on the correlation between the legalization of marijuana in the state of Colorado, but across the country as well in other states. The correlation with Oregon and other states that have adopted similar statutes around marijuana.
And what's it
as
like?
Colorado has.
What's it boil down to?
It boils down to that the addiction rate, the suicide rate is through the roof in states.
Oh, really?
In states that have adopted the legalization of addiction rates, suicide rates, mental health issues, etc.
Addiction rate to marijuana or addiction rate to other things, like a pathway, like that, that theory that was going back to the day is more true than we thought?
I brought that up as we were working on this project. So this concept that marijuana is a pathway drug to other harder drugs.
Yeah.
We knew that when I was 15 years old.
I mean, they said it.
Long time ago.
And the marijuana people at least said, nah, not really. I'm not interested in coke or whatever, right?
Yeah, from my perspective, and it's not true for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's addictive in their personality. But for those who are inclined, there's no way to avoid it in America today because
for sure.
The enticements are so powerful.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So you think that was a bad move generally as a common sense board member kind of guy?
Well, as a private citizen, not as a board member, because we don't advocate, but as a private citizen, I think, and I was an athletic director at Colorado State.
Sure, yeah.
And so I saw the consequences of marijuana, and particularly in young people who are sort of below 22 years of age.
Yeah.
I think it's
agreed.
I think it's a devastating drug.
Okay.
Their emotional development.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many consequences. So I'm not a big fan of marijuana.
Okay.
And that's, by the way, I'm a guy who smoked a lot of pot when I was in college. I'm not a choir boy by any stretch of the imagination. There's a takeover I'd like to have, but I would like to see different thought process around that going forward.
Yeah.
But another correlation to that is we also did a study on automobile theft in the state of Colorado.
Yeah. I've heard that's been going up a ton, right?
Yeah. Well, it's getting better now because the decriminalization of automobile theft happened about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
That we're putting too many people in jail, et cetera, et cetera. So we decriminalized auto theft.
Oh.
And auto theft rates absolutely skyrocketed to the point that we were the leading
state
in the nation around automobile theft.
It was because of that decriminalization.
Well, the legislature last year adopted new statutes around automobile theft.
Oh.
Now there are consequences again, and guess what? The crime rate's going down, and it's going down rapidly.
Probably like shoplifting in California,
Yeah.
right?
No consequences.
Yeah, it was, but now it's kind of back to it's actually a crime if you get
Mm-hmm.
normal amounts of stuff, you know.
I just, from my perspective, society in today's world in America is becoming less inclined to apply consequences to bad behavior. And I think that's a terrible decision. I look at the way people are parenting their children today. I look at the way people are raising their dogs today, and their dogs are out of control, and their children are out of control. And I think it's because you're not enforcing consequences. If you're going to behave badly, you got to change the behavior.
I have that conversation with my wife about our cat. It's like
With a
she's
cat?
like, well, cats are harder than dogs or children. But yes, it's like if there's no real consequences to bad behavior, it's easy to continue.
Well, it's also, I think, the idea that boundaries are reinforcing.
Yeah.
And boundaries create opportunity for growth and change. And boundaries provide security and safety. Boundaries play a positive role, not just a punishment role. And like I think about my dad. My dad was a tough guy. And, back then he threatened to use a belt. He never hit me, but I lived in fear of that thing. He was a stern individual. It was very clear. The world was black and white, and you did not cross the line. I never, ever wanted to disappoint my dad. And kids loved him. Kids flocked to him. He ran a Bible camp. He was the coach on the softball team. Kids loved him. They always knew where they stood. He always had a big laugh. He loved kids, but there was no hanky-panky. And I believe that clarity is safety for children. And we should provide that, I think, boundaries for ourselves, for our peers, for our community, for our children, for our animals. Like, we don't let our horses run over us.
Right.
They're not bad people, right? They just have to have boundaries. And I think all of us would do better socially and respectfully as community members if we observe boundaries with each other that include manners and civility and grace and some things like that seem to be less common now.
Yeah, that's a fair observation.
I think so many people today think that you can't love a child and enforce consequences.
Right.
And it's the opposite is true, as Ginger was saying. There's so much security for children in knowing if I cross this line, oh boy, this is not going to go well for me. And so they feel much, much more secure in that environment. It's just it's that tough love concept, and it's I don't know. I think
that should come back.
Yeah, just call us old-fashioned now at this point, right?
No, that's okay. I think that's old-fashioned is usually pretty good.
Believe me, I got my fair share of it as a kid.
Ginger, I want to jump over to you and talk about Ginger and Baker. Because it's been basically 2 years since you and I were here.
Yeah,
in this
at least.
space.
Maybe a little longer.
Yeah, a little longer than that, maybe. 2.5 years. What's going on with Ginger and Baker? Like, it's always been on my regular stop, and the Rotary Club is flourishing. I don't know if you've been by visiting too much.
Yeah, it's a great
but
breakfast.
Should. It is a great breakfast.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so easy. So I'm a part of this. This is an interesting transition, but Jack, you should come too. But on the second Wednesday of the second month of every quarter is a thing called Guys Who Give. And everybody comes, and you can nominate a nonprofit when you enter that could win $6,000 or something. And 3 of the nominations have to stand up and speak for that nonprofit and give a pitch. And then everybody votes, and everybody writes a check of at least $100 to the nonprofit. And we moved to Mas Fuegos on Harmony recently from Ptarmigan because Ptarmigan had a change in ownership and they wanted to charge us for the room. And we're like, we don't do expenses kind of thing. And so Steve over at Mas Fuegos hosted, and it's so much better. Like, it's just nicer than the room we were in Ptarmigan. And it's been, like, I know that next quarter there's going to be way more people than there was this last quarter because it's just a nicer place. And that's what our Rotary Club has experienced.
Well, that's really nice.
So that's a double thing.
Yeah.
You're invited, Jack. to the next
sounds-
Guys Who Give.
That sounds like a great event.
I'll text you. You'll love it.
Yeah.
And Ginger, thank you for making it so easy for a Rotary Club to thrive and grow because of your great venue.
Well, that's nice. And it really is the point. From the beginning, you and I talked about this a long time ago, that the idea of Ginger and Baker was a community gathering place.
Yeah.
That is why it exists. Otherwise, it's not something we would do naturally. But saving that old mill and creating a place for people to meet new people, to learn new things, to meet community members, to support each other, to celebrate life's transitions, weddings and baby showers and birthday parties and memorial services, and for business people to gather and, for them to meet new people, recruit people to come to Fort Collins, start new businesses. We get to be witnesses to the community as it builds itself. New to town, most of our business in the big months are people from outside of Fort Collins, because when school comes back in session, all the freshmen come to town and their parents. And when you move a freshman in, you bring their siblings and maybe a grandparent. It's a gathering.
Yeah.
Or graduation weekends, it's a gathering. Or the holidays, it's a gathering. And so it's a place where we meet everyone who comes to town, and they get to meet part of Fort Collins and get to see what Fort Collins is about, because it's a building of history. All of our food we try to buy and partner in Fort Collins or local. So our Wagyu beef is a young couple north of town. Our dairy is Morning Fresh Dairy. Our eggs are the guy on Wisdom Eggs across I-25. Our mushrooms are from the guys down in Loveland. Like, everything we try to do is local. And so if you look at all of our branded items, our house-made goods, our menu, we are trying to say we're part of Fort Collins. This came from us. It's part of us, and we're sharing it with people who come to us. And that's the part of Ginger and Baker that I love, is the community aspect of it. Rotary's a big part of that. We're trying to
We're
get more
a small part
and more.
of it, probably.
Yes,
but,
well, it's a lot of people, and everyone who's a Rotarian is in the community.
Yeah.
And so they can share that experience with someone else. They can bring a friend for dinner. They can book a teaching kitchen class. They can give a gift card. If they found joy and connection and community at Ginger and Baker, they can give it away.
Annie Griffith, have you met
Yes.
Annie yet? You should have Annie do a cooking class at Ginger and Baker as a social.
Yeah.
Because, I think sometimes we overlook the opportunity there. But she does, almost regularly, little things. And how many people can you host for a cooking class?
Well, we have generally 16. That way everyone gets to participate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think that would be...
Yeah, it'd be a lot of
She would
fun.
love that, yeah. So, I've loved it. I think it's the best spot in town for so many things.
Well, that's nice.
And especially a Rotary Club. So, how do I say this right? Does that big building make any money yet? Is the business model sorted out? Is that too not yet?
It kind of feels
You're
bad to
close.
say so. We've never been closer. That's what I keep saying to
You're
Jack.
closer.
I've never been closer.
Closer and closer.
We're like the Chicago Cubs. It's always-
but they did win the World Series.
They did one
Yes,
day. Yeah.
yes.
It is such
We're
a
still
challenging
waiting.
business.
Yeah.
Such a challenging business. I was just looking today, January, we just went through all the results of January, and our labor costs were up 14% from a year ago, January.
Right.
Our food costs were up 11% from a year ago, January. And
Wow.
our liquor license went up 17.5% from a year ago. And I just paid that yesterday. And so
Oh, dang.
I'm trying to figure out how to outrun what is
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, insurance costs, local
Yeah,
property
everything.
tax costs, everything is up.
workers' comp is up, family
Yeah.
leave is up.
Labor is up so much.
Our property
from a few years ago.
taxes went up 67%, and that's after I appealed, because the original assessment was a 127% increase. So I know it's a great business. I believe the community cares and supports Ginger and Baker, but it is very challenging to run a business that It's 136 employees.
Oh, is it really?
We're open 6 days a week,
sorry.
7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
So many.
It's a lot of people. It's what is it? I've forgotten even now, 26,000 square feet. It's a bunch of different rooms, a lot of different experiences. And, we are not in charge of anything
Yeah.
that comes in our door. So being a one-site local small business, we have no negotiating power with food suppliers. The city charges us for water and gas, and we don't
clearly
control any of
property
that.
taxes as much
Property
as they want to.
taxes, liquor licenses, food permits. We are the receiver of all of these decisions, and so far, it has not generated an income statement that has a positive bottom line.
I'm sorry to ask that question, by the way. I'm
I
sure
know.
it's
No,
Well,
probably a little humbling.
It's so frustrating, honestly, Kurt.
Where's the opportunity? Is it event space maximization? Is the cash being busy more often? Is it where's the biggest opportunity points?
Yes, well, all the above. I mean, I think it is true. We have launched catering, so we are now offering catering. We're not doing full service catering yet. We're doing drop-off catering.
Okay.
But that part of the business is growing. We have a gift basket line that is growing substantially as well with house-branded
you
products.
can do that good.
Yes, a lot of fun items. We have grown the teaching kitchen substantially. We're doing 5 to 8 classes a week now. The cafe, we opened more hours again after COVID. We had limited hours, so we increased our hours. That helps a little bit. For us, I believe there's opportunity to increase awareness about the cash. You can't believe how many
Sure.
people still walk in the building and go, "Oh, what's upstairs?"
Right.
So we haven't gotten the
actually
word out
see
yet.
that, honestly, unfortunately. Not that
Yeah.
I come very often because I can afford it, but I'm not your demographic, really.
Well, the cash is, I think
I can afford it. I can afford it once a quarter.
yes,
for a special
and
occasion.
who needs to eat out, every night at a
Right.
place like that? But
It's amazing, though.
The cash is.
I've eaten there like 3 times, and
Oh,
it's
I'm so glad.
3 out of my 7 favorite dinner meals in Fort Collins.
Well,
That's
that's
great.
nice.
Yeah.
It is a place where you can get the best wine in town if you want, or a local bottle of wine. You can get 100% grown Wagyu here in Fort Collins, butchered locally, and we cut it up in the business so you can get exact special cuts. You can have that experience. You can have one of the most expensive bourbons you've ever had. You can have an incredible evening, or you can come to the bar, have fun, order an appetizer, get a cocktail.
Yeah.
Be there with friends. You can come for dessert. We have fabulous desserts. The 7-layer chocolate cake up there, I would put up against anything on the planet. So you can come for fun. You can come casual. You can
Yeah.
come early. You
Yeah.
can be the last stop of your evening. But we just want it to be something the community has at its disposal and enjoys.
Yeah.
And I think our biggest challenge with the cash is building the brand of Ginger and Baker, then trying to translate that brand and say to people, and oh, by the way, the cash is also there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we just hired a marketing firm the first time since we've been open.
Okay.
We're working with Connie at Mantu
Okay.
here locally, and
Yep.
she's helping us try to get the word out about the cash. And I think it's an important part of the business.
Yeah, I agree.
And really, Jack has very strong views about the cash. And it's a steakhouse. It's a really nice experience. It's nice furnishings, professional servers. Our staff
Yeah,
up there has been with us for a long time. And
This is a funny
so it's
question.
a different experience.
Are the Sunny Lubbock's people a little bit because you're CSU all through with the athletic director thing and stuff, is it a little bit bumping heads about who's I
I would say not at all.
You're
Yeah.
obviously cooler
Yeah.
at the cash.
Well, I'm
I'm just saying.
I love Lubbock's. I think
Yeah.
I love Sonny. He's got a great spot.
Yeah.
They're in a part of town. We'd love.
It's
to
a
be
lot easier.
We'd love
Yeah.
to be at the corner.
Yeah.
We'd love to be at the corner of Mountain and College.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it would make
amazing.
the business easier for sure.
Yeah, the logistics of getting across Jefferson Street.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It really is.
We talk about it a lot.
But honestly, Kurt, I don't think dining spaces in downtown Fort Collins really compete. I think they're all unique experiences. So Jack's is different than Rare, is different than Japango, is different than Sonny's, is different than the Cash. And I'm glad we have those choices. Jack and I, frequent all of those places. We don't only eat at the Cash. So
You don't have a tab at the Cash.
well,
You do, but
we do hang
it
out
comes
there
right out
quite
of
a
your
bit.
pocket. Yeah.
It's because I don't cook anymore. I'm there all the time, and so he has to come over there if he wants to eat.
Well, I feel like what would be fun is to kind of explore your journey a little more. We went back to Arkansas with Ginger, Jack, in my first conversation with her, so we don't need to revisit that too much. It's episode 73, 76, do you remember?
I don't.
Anyway, listeners can find it. But I'd love to just hear a little bit about your journey and stuff, but before we do that, I'm going to call a break, and I'm going to use a potty break, and we'll start back up.
Okay.
Hi, this is Clint Jasperson, Managing Partner at Purpose Driven Wealth. We believe financial clarity leads to a life of contentment and purpose. Our mission is to guide clients through the complexities of wealth management, retirement planning, and legacy using a values-driven, stewardship-based approach focused on provision, contentment, and enjoyment. With more than a century of expertise through Thrivent, we offer tailored strategies to help individuals and families achieve their goals and embrace generosity. Whether you're navigating a life or business transition or planning for the future, we're here to partner with you every step of the way. To learn more about Purpose-Driven Wealth, call 970-330-7411.
And we're back. And how was that bathroom break for you, Jack? You like
Important.
necessary. We're going to go ahead and just jump back in the time machine for now. And when we come back to present day, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of business principles and practices and stuff. Because I think having a couple of experts here, I shouldn't miss that. But first, we're going to learn about little Jack. So 7th grade, or 7 years old, little Jack, or 5 years old. Were you born in Colorado? Are you from here?
No, I was actually born in Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah, my dad was a great man. He lived to 101. We just lost him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was a great man.
Oh, wow. Neat.
He was captain of the 781st Tank Battalion, fought in World War II for a very, very long time.
Oh, wow.
Fought a very, very hard war.
So quantifiably great man, not just a cool guy, my dad.
Bronze Star, Silver Star, Purple Hearts.
Wow.
I mean, he fought. And
And the French Legion Medal of Honor,
yeah.
which is also amazing.
Yeah, he did some hard stuff. But he, when he got out of the war, went to work and went to work for in the insurance industry for what was then called the Insurance Company of North America, which is now Cigna. And they bounced him all over the place until he landed in San Francisco.
Oh.
And I was a very young child. I was about 1.5 or 2 years old. And so I was raised in Palo Alto, California, right next to Stanford University. It was an idyllic childhood in so many ways.
San Francisco was in its heyday at the time.
Well, Palo Alto was a rural
And Palo
community.
Alto,
It was a rural community. I watched Hewlett Packard and Philco Ford and all the other great businesses show up. Page Mill Road was a dirt road when I was a kid, where all the great Silicon Valley companies are. So it was a great childhood. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we were
Older, younger?
one younger, and the rest were older.
Okay.
So I was the second to youngest. We didn't have anything that we wanted. We all wanted a new baseball glove and a new baseball bat and new blue jeans. Everything was a hand-me-down because we were classic middle-class kids.
Okay.
We didn't need anything. We were well-fed. Security was great. All that stuff.
I mean, that was normal.
Yeah, 85% of America was like that.
Hand-me-downs was the way of the world if you had multiple siblings.
And we didn't know differently, and so it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. But I was really well raised by my parents. My mother.
And what? I'm sorry, keep going.
No, it's okay.
What kind of a kid were you? Were you athletic? Were you intellectual? Were you curious? What were some of the things that your siblings or your parents would have described you as in those elementary school years?
They would have described me as, addicted to sports. I
Okay.
played every sport you could play: football, baseball, basketball, tennis, golf. I just everything that moved, I wanted to go. Be a
Were you
part
like
of.
big and strong early?
No, very, very different. Than that,
Oh,
actually.
really?
I was a very late developer when I was.
Okay.
Let's see. I guess I was a sophomore in high school. I was 5'6" and weighed about 120 pounds. So
Yeah.
I was tiny, and I didn't play football my junior year in high school because I was too small.
You
but I
didn't make
stayed.
the team.
I didn't even go out. I was
Right.
the manager on the football team my junior year in high school.
Okay.
And then I grew 6 or 8 inches, and I still weighed about 120 pounds. So I was
Right.
a walking razor blade. But I could throw stuff, and I was competitive, and so
Yeah.
football became a huge part of my life.
And you were the quarterback, I guess?
I was the quarterback in high school.
Yeah.
I was a good golfer. People who play golf with me now don't believe that.
Not true. Not true.
So athletics was a big part of my life. I was always a good student.
Yeah.
I can't say that I took my education seriously. I took it for granted, to be honest with you. I just assumed I'd matriculate through high school and go to college and move on and have a life, and
Yeah.
never thought of education as being a core part of that path. I
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
took it for granted, which is an odd thing to say. But I got out of high school and didn't have any football scholarship offers, but I still wanted to play football, and ended up at the University of California at Santa Barbara,
Okay.
and was having a lot of success there athletically, and I was getting a great education. I really appreciated the education at Cal. It was
Yeah.
such a great school. And this is 1970, and the student body rioted. This is the middle of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights
right.
Movement, and the turmoil was
Was it more intense in California than other parts of the country? Kind of. We hear about Ohio and a couple of other places, but Cali has been on the edge of protests for a while.
I think I think places like Kent State and
Yeah.
places in Chicago and
Yeah.
other parts of the country were equally intense. But being in the San Francisco Bay Area,
Yeah.
with the Haight-Ashbury district there, and the
Berkeley
Fillmore
right
district
nearby
there,
and
Berkeley
whatnot.
and Stanford. We lived literally right next door to Stanford University. It was top of mind, and,
Yeah.
and it was discussed. When I was at University of California, the student body rioted, and when we blew up the Bank of America. And yeah.
Some people.
Yeah, not
blew
you.
up the Bank of America.
Yeah, some people.
Well, we are collective or something. I don't know what. But
Ginger's like, get that out of your mouth. Yeah. Have you ever been in a lawsuit?
but I was, I've always been interested about things that are not necessarily just political, but social as well. How is society moving? What are people thinking? What's going to happen next?
What were you going to school for?
I was studying history.
Okay.
I studied American history, Jeffersonian history
Okay.
specifically.
Interesting.
So I thought I was going to go on and be an attorney, when I graduated college. But when the university was closed, we came back when it reopened, and the athletic department shut down the football program, yanked
wow.
everybody's scholarship, and so I said, I want to keep on playing ball. And so I ended up going on a journey at that point. I went down to San Diego State and played there for Don Coryell.
Okay.
He made me a tight end instead of a quarterback, and I got beat up.
You were
And I
way
thought-
too skinny for that.
I said, "This is real football. This is real football. I want to go play quarterback."
I like to
again.
throw the thing.
Yeah.
Don't hit me after that.
So I ended up having to go back to junior college to reestablish, and so I ended up going to 4 universities.
Oh, wow.
Colorado State was my last stop, and it was a great stop.
Yeah. So you were already junior, senior by that
I
time?
was a junior when I came to CSU,
Okay.
and so I played my junior and senior year here.
And did you start right away?
I just think I started the third or fourth game.
Okay.
Second or third game in. I can't remember, to be
Okay.
honest. But I had a great offensive coordinator, coach, guy by the name of Doug Gearhart, who, in my opinion, which I think is kind of informed, I think Doug Gearhart is actually the inventor of the West Coast offense. He coached with Bill Walsh and was in lots of different places, and I think Doug carried that
Kind of that
wherever
short
he went.
pass kind of notion was.
Well, CSU that year was the number one in NCAA for passing yards. So
Oh, wow.
Passing and total offense.
in
as
total
well.
offense. So they had the stats nationally. They led
Wow.
the nation, and 8 of your senior team were drafted by the NFL. So they had a pretty successful
Yeah, we
football
had
program.
9 of us were drafted.
Nine.
2 guys one guy in
Of us, you were drafted as well?
Yeah, I was drafted by the Dolphins.
Okay.
And Mark Mullaney was drafted in the first round, and Al Simpson was drafted in the first round. I mean, we had some ball players,
Yeah.
some good talent. So it was a great experience, and it was formative in many ways.
Yeah.
Very formative.
What did you think when you landed in, because where was your previous stop on your college transfer tour?
Besides Colorado State?
Yeah, before that.
Well, I was at a junior college, Foothill Junior College in the Bay Area in San Francisco.
Okay.
Before that, San Diego State, and before that was...
And then you like
California.
land this CSU thing, and it was, I presume, both based on kind of interviews and performance. And then did you come to Colorado for the first time, or had you been already?
I don't think I had ever been to Colorado until I came here on a recruiting trip.
Yeah.
And I'd been offered a scholarship to go to Weber State in Utah, and so, who knows what life would have been if I'd gone to Weber
Right.
State.
Never would have met Ginger, probably.
Well, you never know.
Who
You never
knows?
know.
Who knows? But what did you think about Fort Collins at the time? Because this is like what? Like
It's 1972, 73,
Yeah.
right around there.
it's just kind of starting to turn into a cool town in some ways.
I think it was still a cow town.
Cowtown.
73.
Cowtown to cool town by the 90s, kind of.
But, again, it was one of those things that didn't really matter that much to me because the people I was with, my friends, the ball players I was playing ball with, I loved them, and we had a great life with each other, and I didn't care what city I lived in. It would have been great any place. So
Yeah.
the place I was didn't really matter that much.
Okay.
But Fort Collins was a very nice place. I did enjoy it.
So, to get to the next stop in the career, kind of like how did you were growing up in an insurance family? Is that just kind of what you jumped into right out of the gate, or not that?
Well, because I was playing football, I bounced around.
You
the
got drafted.
Yeah, I bounced around the NFL
Okay.
a couple of years unsuccessfully. Never really caught on with anybody, but I was completely obsessed by it. That's what I wanted to do.
You were focused.
I was absolutely focused.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. And by the
So
time
you probably ate your first humble pie at like 24 or 25 or something when that started to dry up, that dream.
right, I bounced around with really 6 different teams over that time frame, and so I was hired and fired 6
On the
different
practice
times.
team and this and that, whatever.
Yeah, and let me tell you, when you get cut, it's a blow.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
it's a statement of being. I mean, I tell this story all the time.
Hmm.
When people ask you what you do, you don't say, "Well, I do lawyering" or "I do doctoring." You say,
Right.
"I am a lawyer. I
Right.
am." It's a statement of being of who you are, and I am a football player. So you lose your identity, particularly something you're that wrapped up in, and it takes a while.
I'm
to,
almost on the team for the Dolphins or whatever,
Right.
right? Like you're not quite
Yeah.
anything.
Right. You just and it hurts to lose all those relationships, not being in the huddle or the locker room anymore.
Yeah.
It's really life altering, and it takes. Ginger and I talk about this all the time about change, whether change is good or change is bad. Change is change, and you have to mourn the loss of what you've just changed from and
Yeah.
what you're moving to.
Yeah.
And it does take a while to learn how to live a different identity than the one that you've just lost, and that's whether you're fired from a banking job someplace, or fired from something that you really enjoy and you don't get to do it anymore. It takes a while to recover from it.
So what was that like for you? Like at the end of your NFL career, did you like, okay, I guess I gotta get a stupid
A real job.
job?
He said, I have to get a real job.
Yeah.
I was going to go up to Canada and play ball. I thought about going to Japan. Japan was playing ball as well. My dad kind of grabbed me by the throat and said, "You're not that good. It's time to move on."
Right. You might be able to make 20 grand a year in Japan, but that's not really that great.
So, I was too busy. I had 2 children at that point. And so the need for me, there wasn't a whole lot of time to sit on my hands and worry about what I just had lost. It was time to go on and get something done.
Yeah.
And so I went to work in the retail banking business.
Okay.
My first wife was from Cheyenne, Wyoming. We moved up there.
Oh, wow.
I went to work for the First National Bank and Trust Company of Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Interesting.
And I learned a lot about money,
Yeah.
an awful lot about money. A lot of good tools came out of that experience, but I didn't need to learn a whole lot more. I thought there was something more interesting in life than that. And so Ended up going to a privately owned reinsurance intermediary firm.
Yeah.
And it's like investment banking.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's all about raising capital. And so that's how I ended up in the reinsurance marketplace.
It's almost like an arbitrage play with occasional setbacks.
And it's
Is that reinsurance in a nutshell? I don't know.
yeah. Well, I went from being an intermediary and doing transactions and bringing parties together to actually underwriting risk and taking the risk myself as part of my
Oh,
career.
interesting.
And so you go years and years and years without paying a claim if you're just insuring earthquakes and hurricanes and
Sure.
tsunamis and floods and things of that sort. And then all of a sudden the world explodes. So in 2004 and 2005,
Okay.
we had 15 hurricanes make landfall in the space of a little over a year. Charlie, Francis, Ivan, Jean, Katrina,
Yeah.
Rita, William. I could tell you all of them.
I
They're like
remember
my
that
children.
season.
We paid out billions of dollars of claims in a very short period of time.
And you didn't have it covered necessarily, hedged or whatever.
Oh, we
Oh, yeah.
absolutely did.
Yeah, so this is after we moved to Boulder because Jack had started.
You guys had met by now.
his-
What
yes.
what year did you guys meet? It would
96.
reveal your age, but
96, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just turned 52.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
I thought
Not
you were
now or then. Yeah. But he had started a company in Boulder that it was the first internet-based insurance company, and it underwrote catastrophic risk, and they devised the first program that literally looked at the collection of risk, like a map with every zip code and every address, and they knew the geology below the house, the proximity to a coast, and they knew how many
So you were
they
using
had.
big data before
in
big
any
data
one-
was cool.
Yeah, he was the first one, started his own company and then became the first Lloyd's of London syndicate outside of London, and all of that around catastrophe. So I always used to tell people he's a disaster waiting to happen. That's who Jack is, because his whole business was built around preparing for catastrophic events.
Yeah. What here's a question for you out of the blue, just like, have you ever made any money on Ginger or Baker yet? What are the biggest potential catastrophes facing the US right now?
I think the unbottled explosion is earthquake in California right now.
Yeah.
We haven't had a major event in California really since, I'd say, 1994, the Northridge earthquake in 1994. And earthquake seismic events are like stress with a
Right,
rubber
like
band.
Bank of America started
Yeah.
because of the San Francisco earthquake
Right.
back in the day.
Traded
Right?
stock, yeah. But, seismic faults, particularly in Northern California, the strike slip faults that go laterally, horizontally with each other, they're always moving. And the more they move before they release, the more tension builds up. And when they do move, finally, they can be cataclysmic. So I think that's a big deal. I think the idea of a Class 5 hurricane making landfall in a real populated part of the world, and that has not happened. I mean, people think the disasters that have happened recently,
Like a real populated place being like a Miami.
Miami, or if it really comes into I mean, Katrina
New
was
Orleans properly.
Katrina was a big deal, a relatively big deal. But that was storm surge that came into the
Right.
Ninth Ward
Right.
in and around New Orleans. But it was a Catastrophe 2 hurricane event, so the wind damage was nominal. If we have a Cat 5 going to Houston or going to New Orleans, or
Yeah, even South Carolina, some of those areas there are pretty heavily populated too.
yeah, I think those are all
Okay.
major exposures. And we're not talking about a $50 or $60 billion event. We're talking $120, $150 billion event that will
Right.
it'll alter the economy of America
Yeah.
in a very meaningful way. So
On top of the disaster that it represents. for
Right, just all the
humanity.
lives,
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
communities, all the
I don't mean to sound insensitive
Yeah.
about that.
No, but it's like the fires that have been going in Southern California. Part of it is because we all want to live in places that
right.
are high
The
risk.
values are so high.
Close to the ocean, in Tornado Alley, in hurricane proximity, in beautiful foothills of Colorado. And so we build
Right.
and we build
In the
and we
trees.
build, and then
Yeah.
the disaster happens. So the significance of the disaster keeps escalating. And these things, yes, they're costly, but they're also giant disruptions socially.
Yeah, yeah, for
Communities,
sure.
entire communities are
Well, like the
gone.
Asheville area and stuff, like
Right.
it's just like still coming back together, and most people aren't in permanent housing by any means yet.
Yeah.
And Kentucky's taken it right in the nose in the last 5 days as well.
Yeah.
It's in
The
bad
flooding.
shape, yeah.
So you're like super tuned in to like those major societal kind of events, and just not because of your current vocation necessarily, just because your expertise.
I pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I think about my orientation to society, and I've always had this sort of ability to read the tea leaves a little bit earlier before people do. And I can remember back in the late 70s, early 80s, and watching what was going on in terms of the way in which America was arming itself with guns and weapons. And the debates weren't really even started at that point. There was no real conversation about the Second Amendment. But I just watched the proliferation of guns in America. And I just sort of said to myself, holy shit, this is going to be a big deal someday.
There's going to be more murders.
This is going to be a bad thing. And I just had a sense that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's other things going on around the world today that concern me a lot. And so...
Would you care to share?
Well, I think that I look at what's happened over the space of the roughly last 10 years, maybe 15 years, but particularly the last 10 years, around how much we have completely discredited the American government, the institutions of the Supreme Court or the FBI or the CIA. You know, and you know, Donald Trump has made a living at doing that. And, you know, it's gotten him elected, so he's gotten his own gain out of that, but at what cost?
Yeah.
You know, the cost of, you know, causing the American people to lose trust in those institutions is massive.
Well, and question, did he make it happen, or did he bring it to light?
That's a really good question. And I think there are certainly flaws in those institutions. And at the same time, I think that he has brought it to life. I think he has just amplified.
He's activated it.
He's
a little
definitely
bit.
traded on it.
Sure, for sure.
You know, maybe he saw it and amplified it. Maybe he's highlighting it, but he cast it like, you know, even this week, what's going on this week, Jack and I were talking, federal employees are not bad people, right? They're not stupid. They're not mean. They're not lazy. They're not usurious. Federal employees were employed for a purpose. And it may be that we all say we don't need so much of that. And in fact, let's do less of that. But it doesn't mean the person is the problem.
Yeah, it has some kind of a personal attack. If you're a federal employee, you're a bad person.
Yes, the demonizing of individuals, I have a lot of trouble with.
I would agree with that.
But I think, too, I mean, the Supreme Court is imperfect. I think it has been politicized to a degree. But I still trust those justices personally, you know, whether they're Donald Trump appointees or whomever nominated them.
Yeah.
I do trust them. And
there's too many party line votes for me to trust them super well, both in Congress and the courts.
But that is their orientation to the Constitution. So I kind of give them a pass on that. I don't give Clarence Thomas a pass, however, in his behavior. I think that's way outside the boundaries of a well-behaved Supreme Court justice. And I would like to see him go away. So that's the one blister that bothers me. But I think most recently, just in the last 2 weeks since the air disaster at Reagan in Washington, D.C. with the helicopter, the commercial jet, the American Airlines jet, you know, Donald Trump comes on the news the next day and just blisters the FAA. Right? And he criticizes DEA.
Doesn't know nothing about it yet.
He criticizes the DEA initiatives.
DEI.
And by the diversity, equity, and
Inclusion.
DEI. Yeah, sorry, right. And by the way, I think he's directionally correct about that.
Right.
DEI policy in the FAA has caused him to be unable to staff the organization.
Yeah.
But you would think that every air traffic controller that's up in those towers today are a bunch of idiots.
Right.
The way he talks.
Yeah, if you just listen to him, he's like, well, they've hired nobody but fools.
Right.
Yes, that's a bad quote, right?
Yeah.
We don't believe that.
And so with social media, and the propensity for Americans to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, all of a sudden we don't trust the FAA anymore.
Right.
And so I will stick by my words that I think that he has amplified and accelerated the discrediting of really important American institutions.
Well, and I will agree with you in that regard, and I will also agree with him when he says that the media was kind of a bunch of crap prior to his arrival, and that there was some stuff going that
It's so
wasn't
interesting.
good.
Yes. Well, I think, in general, media has taken a turn in, the most recent past. Media has become more entertainment.
Totally.
And so the role of journalism, like I have a journalism minor. I worked for a newspaper. I worked for a radio station. I really believe in the institution and the power of journalism as it stands for investigative reporting, both sides of the story, the clarity of facts. And we all are, unfortunately, I think, subject to an entertainment industry that casts itself with a news headline. And that's very difficult to sort. And, Jack and I kind of drives me crazy. We watch CNN, then we watch Fox, and then we watch CNBC, and then we watch NPR, or we listen to it, and then we watch public television. And at the end of it, you go, how can those people be living in the same America talking about the same topic? Because the Venn diagram doesn't overlap. There are completely alternate views of the world. And I don't believe that's good for any of us.
No, I
think
would agree.
We, in a way, are being hoodwinked by the entertainment industry. And
Well, it's
I want
profitable to
us.
separate us.
Yes, well,
Kind of.
It's created the camps and the tribes and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. And
And humans are kind of tribal anyway.
Well,
and so I think the
yes.
tribes that we should be in is the people that live close to me.
community,
in my community, that's my tribe.
is important. But even
and-
locally, the school board divisions,
Sure.
the city council
Yeah.
divisions, that we need our leaders here in Fort Collins.
used to be your church.
Yes,
Yeah.
That
it
was your
used to
tribe.
be. But to rise up to better leadership, to more honest and open conversation, to willingness to listen to wildly different viewpoints that your own that are expressed civilly and with substance. And we can't let Fort Collins be that. We're better than that.
Yeah,
We have to
100%.
be better than that. And
Yeah.
I do think it's an individual responsibility to both seek multiple viewpoints, to behave civilly and respectfully, but to be willing to be challenged, because there are many ways to view the world, and not
Yeah,
all of them are
yeah.
pleasant. And so I do think, we have to own that as citizens of Fort Collins and as Americans.
I think the whole subject of Donald Trump is really important to talk about.
Yeah.
And find a way to talk about it with people openly. I love what's going on right now. I mean, I love what's
The
being
Doge
done.
stuff and whatever else.
I do, and it's a bit of a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
And I could be very critical of lots of
Okay.
aspects of it, but something radical had to happen
Yeah.
to stop the growth of, $36 trillion of debt.
Yeah, and
It's the biggest
2 or 3 trillion a year more.
It's a threat to our society
or civilization.
long term.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is.
Our children, our grandchildren. It's burying the future. So it's real.
If interest rates go up 2 points, 200 basis points on $36 trillion of debt,
Right.
it consumes.
It-
At that point, the debt service consumes the entire budget.
Yep.
No more defense.
Yeah.
No more anything.
more education.
That's how big a deal it is.
Yeah.
So we are on a really fragile rope in that regard.
Agreed.
But going back to Donald Trump, because I think it's important to talk about it. And as I said, there's lots of things that he does that I like. I think he's a smart
Yeah.
guy, and he understands how to change things. He is a change agent and all that stuff. When I was the athletic director at Colorado State, the only thing I really did to intervene in the activities of my coaches, whether it was the head football coach, basketball coach, volleyball coaches, whatever it was, they had to fill out a form for every student athlete that they were intending to offer a scholarship to.
Okay.
And they couldn't offer the scholarship until they finished the form and gave it to me. And all I read about was their behavior. How many layers of social media deep did you go to find out, is this kid's mother or father been arrested? Has this kid been arrested? I want to know what this kid's character is. Because the rule was real simple, no bad characters. I don't care how good a student you are. I don't care how good an athlete you are. I watched, in personal experience in my own athletic career, I watched some phenomenal athletes who were terrible teammates destroy teams. I could talk about Johnny Manziel, You could talk
Sure.
about Terrell Owens. These are phenomenal athletes. And how many teams did they destroy? Legitimately blow them up. And so for me, that's Donald Trump. I look at Donald Trump's character, and he does not tick the box for me. I've looked at his business career and how many billions of dollars did he
Oh yeah,
lose
he's
for
screwed
investors.
people over here and there, and this
Constantly.
and that. Yeah.
He puts lawyers in his pocket like a gun. He talks about women like they're chattel. And just he doesn't tick the character box for me. So he's not even a candidate. He doesn't even get on
But
the
he's
list
the
for me.
president.
Well, he is the president. So
Yeah.
now he is my president.
Right.
He is my president.
And he's doing a bunch of stuff that you think is
but
prudent.
and I'll
So that's an interesting thing for me to have that tension, I guess, if you will.
but I'll stick my neck out and say, how sustainable is it? How long is it going to take for him to blow himself up or blow somebody
Yeah, I don't
up
know.
or blow some institution up? And I will tell you, from my perspective, it's absolutely guaranteed it'll happen because he's just
Because you're a
incapable.
risk analyst and he can't help himself? Is that what you're saying?
That's
kinda?
exactly what I'm saying.
Interesting.
And at the same time, all of the stuff, and I understand why he's the president of the United States.
Sure.
The reasons are valid, and the Democratic Party and the left wasn't listening. And by the way, I'm an independent. I've
Yep.
gone down both paths, and
Same.
so I can think both
I
ways.
voted for Kanye in 2020, so.
Oh no!
But I
Kurt.
voted for Trump for the first time in 2024.
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
I mean,
Not because I think he's awesome, mostly because he drew RFK and Tulsi and a number of other real voices in the political commentary to his camp, and he humbled himself a fair bit. Like, I hadn't really seen Trump do that, but in his acceptance of those other voices to the cause, we'll call it, he humbled himself a fair bit.
It's quite a diverse cast of characters.
It really
There's no
is.
doubt
It
about
really
that.
is.
How it accelerates change to the benefit of the American public is what we will all be watching.
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, and I do worry that
Yeah, and I'm holding my breath.
Yeah.
Like, if you read my blog from last month,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know if Orange Man bad or not, but you people freaking out just because Orange Man bad
But
should probably just step on the brakes a little bit and wait and see how it goes.
and again, I'll make a statement that a lot of people could call kind of off the rails kind of a thing, but this is that
Perfect.
sort of
That's
social
what the LoCo Experience
It's,
podcast
it's
is
that
for.
sort of social instinct capability that I think I have a bit inside
Yeah.
of me of watching things happening.
Do you think he's Hitler?
Well, that's exactly the path I was headed down. Who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought that brown shirts could exist in American society? That people would be watching each other, that the institutions would be taken down, that the safeguards around those institutions would be dismantled, and all of that stuff is taking place right in front
Yeah.
of our eyes right now. And what's the end game? What's the purpose here? Is it to pass the baton to J.D. Vance, or maybe it's to Marco Rubio? Or is it for him to find a way to stay in office perpetually? And I know that's a ridiculous thing to say out loud, but it's not. I don't think it is. I think it's something we all we should be watching, and we shouldn't be afraid to say those things out loud, because the more we say them out loud, the less likely it is that it will happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so,
Can I swing it back to you, Ginger? Are you as nervous about this as your risk analysis husband?
I think he is always more forward thinking from a social structure perspective than I am. I'm very much about
Jack is or Donald?
he is. Jack is.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah,
Make
I
sure
don't
the
know about
reference
Donald,
points.
honestly. I think Jack is very attuned. He does have a vibration, like a pitchfork, that is about social unrest, about social norms,
Yeah.
about behaviors socially, really macro. And I consider myself to be much more about
Yeah.
who showed up today.
Yeah.
Do people speak
You like
civilly?
me because I'm me.
Yes,
Not,
yes, and
whatever.
it's really about how we treat each other one to one right now in this moment, because in the end, I believe that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Even like
the
Jack,
rest of it is an aggregation of those
yes,
smaller
and
things.
and yes, you are in that pond, you are swimming in that pond, but Frankel's book about Man's Search for Meaning,
Sure.
he was in the concentration camp, and some people helped the Nazis, some people hurt their own brother, some people gave up, some people committed suicide. He pushed himself to find meaning and hold himself accountable to a different level. And I would like to think that our challenge individually is to not be what is cast upon us, but to be what's right and who we are, and hopefully by that help affect change, in the ripple effect. I do believe in community. I believe in the influence in community. I believe that knowing our neighbors is part of our social responsibility. We know our neighbors house by house, who they are, and we know their dog's name, and, we trade soup cans, or, we are friends with our neighbors. I feel like that's part of our social responsibility. I know the River District business owners because that's the community we're in. We participate in a number of activities in the community, like the funding of a new center for the homeless population that actually is designed to provide services to re-enter people into a productive society.
Yeah.
It's not a bed.
Yeah.
It's social services.
It's not a
it's
magnet.
Nutrition.
It's a accelerator.
I
hopefully.
believe, and I've been so impressed by the leadership. Again, the people who are making this happen in town are people who have standards. They hold people accountable. They offer doors into futures, but people have to walk through those doors with responsibility. And it is true, and I have become, even more acutely aware because of our location in the community with the business, that if you're trying to get on your feet again and you want to go do a job interview and you are homeless, where are you going to take a shower?
Yeah.
Do you have any clean clothes? If everything you own is with you, where do you put it when you go to a job interview? If you put it under a bridge and everything you own is stolen, then tomorrow what do you do? The barriers to re-entering society are enormous if you fall off the train.
Yeah.
And so the idea that as a community that we create a way for people who want to be contributing members of society to enter a door that has a bed, food, mental health support, physical health support, maybe training on how to interview, a shower and a locker, for
where
your
you can put your
things,
stuff.
so you can go to your transportation.
Yeah.
So what path do we want people to be on? And that, for me, that's the world I live in more than Jack. And we are very different and yet have giant overlapping Venn diagrams personally about our values, about our motivation, about our energy, about our passions. But he is way more out there and bigger picture, whether it's designing Ginger and Baker or whether it's seeing social trends. I am more, what are we doing and who are we influencing and what is our part?
Who's on my immediate contact
and
circle,
what can
that.
our voice help do in this moment? And so we have different perspectives. And I personally have trouble with people whose values, I believe, lead them to demean or belittle or dehumanize others. And so I struggle with some of the dialogue today by our leaders, because that dialogue is demeaning and dehumanizing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I disagree with where they might be going, but I don't appreciate or support the way they're going to take us there, because we will be a meaner, more judgmental, more fractured community on their train.
We all need more grace and more love.
And knowledge, more real-time
care
appreciation.
And walking in their shoes and all that kind of stuff.
So if we get somewhere better, and on the way we hate each other and we separate from each other.
Yeah, if our budget is balanced but we hate each other, what's
we
the use
good
of that?
there?
Yeah, that's not any better
I'm
than
not too
going bankrupt
crazy
together.
about that.
Yeah, that's fair. I dig that.
Ginger's capacity to care for people is unlimited. She's a remarkable woman. I mean, she's obviously a remarkable executive and leader, and gets more things done than any human being I've ever known in my life, and I mean that literally. But our neighbor across the pasture and 3 houses down, in his mid-80s, let's go check in on him.
Yeah,
Let's go take him a piece of pie, and because he's alone and he's singular, but there's so many of those people that she thinks about that way.
Yeah. You remind me a lot about the Matthews House founder, Jerry, and just that heart to really try to want to help everybody, but just knowledge that you can't actually do that. It's more about trying to set cultural trends and
Yeah.
changes and stuff. And I hope for both of, I guess, of your sakes, kind of that notion of community and the notion of multi inputs to this current mega plus maha plus whatever else is going on won't be terrifying, but instead can be beneficial. And we'll see. I hope, we'll see if you're right or wrong in that regard, Jack, in terms of the risk component.
Yeah, so I told Jack when he went to CSU, the first revolutionary always gets beheaded. I mean,
Right.
It's a view that I have always held in business, in social structures. When people see a dramatic change that needs to occur,
Yeah.
and they are willing to demonstrate the courage and the perseverance to cause the change, they will be unpopular. The first revolutionary
Yeah.
always gets beheaded. Jack has that kind of courage. There are people who have that kind of courage. Maybe that's what we're experiencing, that the first revolutionaries are moving.
Yeah.
And it may be that the opportunity for us to remake America again, with more individual accountability and autonomy, with more personal responsibility, with a future
And just
for
a
our
smaller
kids.
drag on the system.
A future for our kids that's brighter. Maybe that's what we're facing, and change is uncomfortable. As Jack said, I worked for a guy once who said, all change is loss, and all loss must be grieved. So even if you're changing for something great for the future, you're giving something up.
Yeah.
And you got to grieve it. And so there's grief in this process, and there's hope, but there's also fear. And all of us have a role to play, I think.
I like that. I like that notion.
We have to bring heart
Yeah.
and humor.
I looked up
back into the
communitarian. Apparently, communitarian isn't a good thing because it's like too much close to communism. But like I was thinking, maybe I'm kind of a communitarian. I'm not a libertarion per se. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a local first guy ultimately, and I'm a principles kind of guy notionally. Before we get into our mandatory shouldn't talk about segments, we're gonna do our grab bag because we've got 2 Ginger and Baker slices of pie, and
2 each, or just
no, there's 2
We're
total
giving
pies.
them away.
So these are for the listeners. You guys are giving these
but
away.
You're not giving two to two different people. You're just giving one.
One.
We could have done.
Yeah,
two,
bring
right? We
somebody.
could have done two, yeah.
No, but bring somebody. You get a free slice of pie, so bring somebody
So I'll
else.
double down. We'll give 2 to each winner.
Okay, so I'll write on back
Yeah.
plus 2.
Per- yeah.
Basically, we'll just put that right
Per
on
Jack.
there. Okay, so these are the awkward or businessy or who knows what kind of questions. Oh, I can't draw your balls though. So Jack, why don't you draw 2 of those, and Ginger, I'm going to have you draw 2.
Okay.
And then we're going to ask you guys these questions. And one of the 4 questions is going to be the prize winner.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to go all over the place here. So what numbers do you have, Jack?
23 and
Okay.
17.
23. Oh, this is a fun one. And 17 was your second?
Yeah.
Any stupid human tricks that you're willing to share or show?
No.
You must have something. Do you have something?
I can blow bubbles off my tongue.
Like, do you have to have any special equipment or preparation? Or
Usually
anything?
a 6-pack of beer will get me there.
Okay, I got an IPA in the fridge. You need that? Like, you could just, like what? Like off the tip of your tongue?
Well,
Or?
you know, I was an altar boy in church, and my brother Bill and I served together a lot. And we'd sit in the altar, and the sermon would be going on. We'd sit back there, and we'd start blowing spit bubbles off of our tongue to entertain ourselves.
Okay.
So
So you can, like, create little bubbles off your tongue.
yeah,
And, like,
I don't know if my saliva is the right consistency. It's an important conversation.
yeah. All right. That's I'm not sure that will get you on Saturday Night Live, but
By the
You
way,
know,
did you see that 50-year anniversary show the other night?
parts of it.
That
yeah.
was awesome.
It was pretty good.
That was awesome.
Yeah, there was a lot of neat behind the scenes to that. Oh, did you get 7? You want to do 17 right away too?
Well, whatever you want me to do.
Sure, we'll do that. How did you define success in your business or career? Like, what were you chasing?
You know, I was pretty. I don't think there's a single answer to that. I think it's
Yeah.
multifaceted, and I was pretty clear-headed with myself. First and foremost is you got to make money. Because if you don't make money in a business, the business doesn't survive.
Yeah.
So you have to make money. You can never run out of cash. So I was pretty adamant about financial responsibility and financial success. And through that financial success, you create opportunities for so many people. And I owned my business that I found, and I shared the equity in the business with a handful of people, more than a handful, a number of people that worked with me.
Yeah.
And
How many people did you employ over the years, do you think?
oh my gosh, I don't. I'd say 1,000.
Yeah, 500 at
5,000.
ICAT.
Yeah.
More than that at EW Blanche.
But with turnover and all that, I don't know.
Thousands of
Yeah,
people
Yeah,
over the years bought groceries with your paychecks.
yeah.
And
yeah,
put their
exactly.
kids through college and paid their mortgages.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
you take that thing seriously.
We had about 15 people, who got rich, because
Yeah.
of, having equity in the business. And boy, did they deserve it.
Yeah, they worked hard.
absolutely They worked hard, and they were really talented. And
For quite a while without getting paid like they should have, probably.
yeah.
That's why you pay equity, right? Usually.
No,
'Cause
they
you
got
can't,
they
no.
got paid well too. I think that I think that's another thing. Ginger and I talk about this quite a bit. That both of the businesses, or the businesses that she and I have run, are almost always named one of the best places in the state to work.
Yeah.
Whether it's the business I ran in Boulder, a company called ICAT, it's still considered one of the best places to work. So that was important. But I think that standards, just getting things right, doing great stuff, really, really good stuff was really important to me, more important to me than the money. It's like, can we take pride in what we're doing, and are we creating a piece of art here, which is kind of a funny thing to say about a business, but
Yeah.
but I did think about it that way, and delivering great value to our customers.
Yeah.
That was important, and transparency. I mean, that was a cornerstone to our business. That I was constantly having to raise capital for our business because it was very capital intensive. And one of my cornerstones was I would go to prospective partners and I'd say, here's where all the problems are. You know the story. You know what we can do. You know what we've done. But here's where
If there's risk, they're right here.
Here's the warts. Here's what we screw up. And it's amazing how meaningful that was in establishing partnerships, number one, and number two, it was a really effective way to raise capital.
That's why he was so successful.
I haven't met very many people that are way more big picture guy than I am. Like, I'm kind of a biggish picture, but I'd like to be involved locally. But you definitely have that kind of 30,000 foot view
He does.
dialed in. And I hope you're not right about Trump, I guess, because of that.
No, I'm not. You and me both.
Right.
It's just a warning.
Yeah,
It's like the yellow
Yeah.
lights on. Pay attention.
Yeah, that's fair. 25 and 10 is your numbers,
Yeah.
Ginger. And 10 is, what's a hobby or skill you've always wanted to pick up but haven't?
Oh, I know what
the answer
that.
to that.
The harp?
Yes, it's the harp. The first time I retired, I'm really bad at it. The first time I retired was 20 years ago, and I've always wanted to play the harp. I took classical piano lessons all my growing up years and can play the piano, although now I'm really rusty. But the woman who taught me was ancient. She, as a child, had taken from Paderewski, and it was severe classical music.
Yeah.
And her daughter was a harpist. Her son was an organist. And I wanted to learn to play the harp. So Jack bought me a harp for my retirement. And I've had it 20 years now. And I just took my first lesson with Meredith, who you had on
Yes,
your
just
podcast.
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And so my goal is to learn to play the harp.
So is she going to do like Zoom harp
Yes,
lessons
yes.
mostly with you, I guess? Because she's mostly a Scotlander.
Yes. When she's in town, I want to see her. And she also, the first time, taught me how to string and tune the harp, which is also very important.
Imagine, yeah. Well, I'm excited about that.
Me too.
I want to have you back in 2 years. and
play a
we'll,
little piece
we'll bring
for
your
you?
harp in here,
Okay.
yeah. Maybe you and Meredith could come together. Which
Oh,
is
yeah.
bad.
I would not make her do that.
What was the other one? 25?
25. Yeah.
What's one thing on your bucket list that you're determined to accomplish?
That's a good question. One thing.
Does it have to be an accomplishment, or can it just be an experience?
Well, it's an experience. I mean, a bucket list is kind of an experience-driven
Well,
thing.
going back to the first question,
You don't have to start a new
I
company
am
or anything like
determined
that.
to make Ginger
Make
and Baker
bottom
work.
line.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh, I'm determined.
I want to see your
to make
P&L
Ginger
when
and
you
Baker
show some
work.
black ink
Oh
on that.
my word! And part of it is because what Jack said. We have always shared business success with the team that got us there, and I can't share the rewards of Ginger and Baker with my key management team because it's not there.
Yeah.
And once we get there, then they get that. And that will be good for their lives and their careers and
Yeah.
raising their kids
Yeah.
and fulfilling
All those
their
equity
dreams.
owners like Jack was talking about.
So that's really at the top of my list. But there are other things that I want to do in life, but mostly I want to do things that matter.
Yeah. I hope that keeps continuing for the rest of your journey. Oh, the winning question. Thanks, Ava. The winning question, I'm going to choose Ginger's first answer, which was Meredith
The
and
harp.
the harp. So, lucky winners, contact us through Spotify, through LinkedIn, or through Instagram. And the first one we notice,
So Ginger won and I lost?
no, just one of our lucky listeners wins for coming this far in
That's
the
because
conversation.
I lost? If
Well,
I'd beaten
just
Ginger,
because her
would somebody else-
conversation was so much more interesting, like because Meredith
See,
was
that's
just
my
on a
point.
few weeks ago. Like yours
I
were
wanna-
cool. It's fine, Jack. It's
I want a replay.
it's not a contest. Like you had to have
do
known
you
when
mean
you
it's
met
not a
Ginger, it's not a
contest?
contest. Otherwise, you would lose. Just kidding. Love you both. It's just the way we do it. It's fine. It's just fine. It's just because Meredith was just on the podcast. That's really why.
Okay, fine.
Okay, fine.
I'm over it.
This episode is sponsored by LoCo Think Tank. LoCo Think Tank provides peer collaboration for business owners. We build smart, safe places to help business leaders navigate every stage of the business journey, and we love what we do and who we do it with. Our model features give-back-minded business veterans in the role of LoCo facilitators, and we're always looking for abundance-minded individuals to add to our membership, facilitator team, LoCo community, or to feature on this podcast. Listeners of this podcast who go on to become members of LoCo Think Tank get their 6th month of membership for free. Just mention the LoCo Experience podcast on your application. To learn more, visit our website at locothinktank.com. That's LOCO thinktank.com.
So I started jumping into the faith family politics. Talk to me about your faith perspective.
Well, we've
If you-
we've said it a number of times to each other today. We're just, our foundation is just being 100% committed to doing the right thing, no matter what. And that's a profound
Because of
faith.
like a big guy up there kind of thing?
That's a really interesting way to think about it. I don't feel accountable to God.
Okay.
I'm a child of God.
Yeah.
I feel accountable to all the people around me. I feel accountable to my wife, to
Yeah.
my children, to my
It's
community.
a healthy perspective.
I do know that, through studying the teachings of Jesus over the course of my life, he was profoundly committed to always doing the right thing
Yeah.
and teaching people do the right thing no matter the cost.
Yeah.
And I try to practice that
Yeah.
to the best of my ability, no matter the cost. And it's so seductive and so tempting to just round corners a little bit when it gets a little bit difficult, and that's when it's most important.
Yeah.
So I think that's the foundation of my faith. I've been a student of Jesus, most of my life. I don't know
In a particular perspective, like
the New Testament mostly. And
no,
just
but I
his
mean,
teaching.
were you raised like Presbyterian or this or that?
I was raised
Catholic?
I was raised an Episcopalian. I was
Oh, okay.
Catholic. My dad called it Catholic light.
Yeah, that's what I've called it. Actually,
yeah.
I hate to say that.
which really didn't teach the teachings of Jesus that
Yeah,
much. It was
same.
just more of a ceremony.
Yeah.
And I think the teachings of Jesus are where the rubber really hits the road. And there are so many profound teachings worth listening
So
to.
for
and
you,
integrating
like,
into your life.
The church is of less value than the teachings of Jesus.
Dramatically less value.
Okay.
I find organized religion to be dangerous, and I really respect a lot of them.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church disappoints me so much with its history over the last 35, 40 years. And
Yeah.
the pedophiles, if they were American business, they would be out of business. They would not be permitted to exist today. and there's got to be some consequences associated. They got to clean their act up. It frustrates me beyond belief. And I know that's not going to be very pleasing for a lot of Catholics to hear, but I really don't care.
I think most of them confess it and acknowledge it, and they would probably say the same.
Yeah. So, but that's just.
But yeah, it certainly takes the teeth out of the popes. When the Pope says something, it's like, okay, whatever, dude. Sorry, that's kind of rude, but it's a little bit like that to me when I see him come out with
it's another institution
they get corrupted.
That unfortunately erodes confidence and trust in all of us in institutions. And so it's another part of this eroding of the things that you count on. And, I hope that they have...
That's where you both resonate a little bit, is that we need these institutions of community, of even media, of government, of whatever the government is. It has to stand for something that people appreciate and respect.
Yeah, we are individually responsible and should be accountable to ourselves to be part of what's right and contribute. But we do have to organize into groups and methods, to be able to do commerce, to
kind of
transport.
Standards and norms.
We do have norming, storming. We talk about that as a team, but as a town, as a state, as a nation, we need organization to our ability to effectively give back to each other and to grow opportunity for others. And so institutions have a role. It doesn't mean they're omnipotent, but the erosion of institutions disables us from being productive, and we need to count on them.
Yeah,
that's well put.
Yeah, I like that as well. Anything else you want to tag on to that?
Well, no,
Jack?
I just the whole question of faith. I've got a very good friend, Johnny Square, who's the chaplain for the CSU athletic department. And Johnny and I played football.
He's got a cool name too, Johnny Square.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
The Reverend Johnny Square.
Right.
And that boy can preach, let me tell you.
I believe it.
He's really good. But he studies, he's very thoughtful, and he believes in the power of prayer. Something that, frankly, I need to learn more about, the power of prayer. I think a lot of people pray. I don't pray much. I think good thoughts about people and care about people, but prayer is something I need to explore
Sometimes
more
high-performing people are like, God bless all this hard work I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that, the Reverend Square and I are talking to each other a lot. So
I dig it.
A lot to live from him,
Okay.
a lot to learn from him.
All right. Cheers, Reverend Square. Reverend Square. Family or politic, Jack? Would you care to enter into either of those circles? You got two. Well, sorry. You want to go politic first? Let's do that.
Politics is a profession.
Yeah.
There's no question. It's a career. Unfortunately, it's a career. When the Constitution was written 250 years ago, politics wasn't
such
servant.
a thing.
It was public service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People had a career. They were successful at their career. They went to the legislature, whether it was the local legislature or the federal legislature, and they served, and then they left.
Yeah.
And they went home. And God bless Mitch McConnell. He's one of the most amazing men in my lifetime. And he pisses me off at times beyond belief. But he's one of the most amazing men I've ever listened to. He is so thoughtful. And yet, how is it that we have an 80-something-year-old senator who's been in office for over 40 years?
And takes little breaks once in a while.
It's absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
That's a career, and it's corrupt. I mean, those guys attract so much money.
Sure.
To their own political campaigns, to the campaigns of other people.
They can't help it, almost.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't kiss Mitch McConnell's ring in the Republican Party, you ain't getting money from the Republican committee. And so that's corrupt. That's America's form of abject corruption. And so I know it's true. I ran for Senate in 2016.
Okay.
And,
against who?
I was in the primary. I was a Republican candidate in 2016. There were 17 people in the field. I finished second out of a field of 17. It was my first walk into politics. But there was a guy by the name of Darrell Glenn who ended up winning the primary, and he was just a little bit right of Attila the Hun. He was a traditional MAGA candidate back then. And there were 2 or 3 of them that were supposed to be running, and 2 of them got knocked out, and only Darrell was left standing. And so that's the politics in the state of Colorado. It's true across the country, but Colorado
Who
in
shows
particular,
up for primaries?
it's whether it's Democratic primaries or Republican primaries.
Primaries are a really interesting thing.
It's the most radical people in those parties who show up. And God bless them. They work, they vote, they give money.
Yeah, their voice gets heard because they show up, and everyone else sits home.
Yeah.
So you got to take your.
I mean, it's all like all of life. It's a participant sport.
It is
kind of.
It is.
Show up. But I would like to see, and all of these things require constitutional changes, which is a huge, huge lift.
As far as the like term limits and different things like that.
Term limits and campaign reform and
yeah, is that the big things? Finance reform, term limits. Is there other things that would help our democracy, a republic, from slipping back into this kind of huge deficit-laden bureaucracy
Well, your
that we've been in?
recent efforts have been around ranked voting and the two-party system. Is it actually destroying the values that we all hold dear about everyone has a vote? But the two-party system sets up this play that the only people you have to vote on, are in this primary dynamic. And would we be better served by having more choice in terms of our candidates and a more free selection process that more people would choose to participate in?
It's a curious question.
Yeah, it is
I think that'll
one.
be back on the ballot. It lost in 2024.
In Colorado here.
It did, but it lost by a small margin, mostly because it's complicated.
It's hard to understand.
Right. But I think that we'll go back to work at putting it back in the ballot again and see if we can't carry that across the line, because I think it would level things out between the two-party system that we've got.
Well, right now, like the Democratic Party obviously dominates the Colorado politic most places except for east of
El Paso.
whatever the Mississippi is. Yeah. I mean, eastern Colorado in general, a little bit western slope, but mostly not.
Yeah, the Front Range, clearly.
Yeah. I want to jump to family. You have 2 daughters?
2 daughters and a son.
And a son?
Right.
They're all probably 30s and up from now, or 20s and up from now? I don't remember.
Well, my son is 48.
Okay.
So I was 23 years old.
Okay.
I was 24 years old when my son was born.
All right.
So I have a 48-year-old son, 47-year-old daughter, and 45-year-old daughter.
And how many grandkids do you have?
4 grandkids.
Okay.
21, 13, 6, and 5.
Let's jump to the grandkids, because we do a one-word description, usually of children, because most of my guests are like in their 30s and 40s, but it's fun on the teenager style. So are you prepared for that?
Yeah.
Not really. Are you scared? So, like, name them, not rank them, but put them to a kid, and then give them a one-word description for me. The 4 grandkids.
Let's see. Our oldest is 21 years old, Kendall, and Kendall is...
You don't have to rank them like an order, but just,
Kendall's
an artist.
Kendall's an artist.
Okay.
Yeah, that's well put.
That's
Kendall's
cool.
An artist.
Theater, voice, acting. Kendall is an artist.
There's some people that are just like naturally there.
Yes. It's been her passion since she was 2 years old.
Yeah.
She's been in plays her entire life. She loves it, has done really
theater.
well.
Yeah. Really cool.
Our grandson, Mac, is 13, and Mac is just magnificent. He's a
Mac the Magnificent.
He's a great human being and good athlete and great student.
Wise beyond his years.
Yeah, he's so much fun to be around.
And he knows more about football than his grandfather, Jack, which is the amazing thing. It's all I listen to with those 2. Oh, my word.
He's a lot of fun.
I like it. I like it.
And then we have a 6-year-old granddaughter, Grayson. And Grayson is just... she's just the love of my life. I mean, she's just wonderful.
Your new favorite.
Yeah, she's just wonderful. She's so much fun to be
Her
around.
Poppy and she have a special thing.
Yeah, she's great. And then her brother, Luke, is a cannonball. Just an absolute cannonball. He's a kid that looks like he weighs 35 pounds, and you pick him up, and he's
55.
He's as dense as magnesium. He's just thick beyond belief. He's going to be a linebacker.
Yeah.
He's got that mentality. And
I like it.
Yeah, he's terrific.
Future linebacker at CSU.
Yeah.
I dig it. LoCo Experience is our final segment. Do you remember what yours? Did you even do it? I don't think you could share one with me.
I don't think we did
Ginger.
it.
You were like kind of like, I don't really have anything that crazy. But our podcast name is the LoCo Experience, Jack. And so normally the craziest experience of your lifetime that you're willing to share is our closing segment. Do you have any like near-death experiences or?
Oh, I have a bunch of those.
Oh, you do? Really?
I have a bunch of those.
Oh,
Yes, I
dang.
actually
I
think
wanna
I
hear
want to
one.
write a book about it because it's really, it's mind-bending.
I've got quite a few too.
Yeah, I know. I've totaled way too many vehicles for one thing.
Oh,
but
dang.
I was driving. So I was a freshman in college in Abilene, Texas, driving home for the holidays to Arkansas. And it was a 12-hour drive. And I was driving by myself, and I left school at the end of school on a Friday. I drove all night long. And the sun was coming up the next morning, and I was so sleepy. And I went to sleep at the wheel of my car on an interstate. And when I woke up, I was a foot from having a head-on with an 18-wheeler. And I don't know how I didn't roll the car, but I hit the median. I turned my steering wheel, and I was going way too fast. And I was about to have a head-on with an 18-wheeler.
Like you had crossed the median already?
No.
And
Well, this is the joy of the story, is that I had come up behind a tow truck pulling the cab of an
dang.
18-wheeler. And I didn't know that in the moment, of
Right.
course. I
It was
thought...
the headlines
Yeah.
were interface.
Yes, so I was having a head-on with an 18-wheeler and could have killed myself trying to get off the
Sure.
road, but thankfully I didn't. But I sat in the median and sobbed for a while to get myself together again, and that really sobered me about driving, my driving experience, because I've always been way too fast. Jack would say I still am, but that was
She's got
so
a
you
left
like
foot.
woke up and you're almost ready to rear end a tow
Yes.
truck with.
yes, but I don't know that in the moment. So that to me was a heart stopper.
All right. Jack, do you have a crazy experience to contend
Well,
with?
other than the day I married my wife, which was a great day. I remember the day we got married, though, and it was time to join her at the altar, and how choked up I became. And I was so surprised, like, what the hell is going on
Yeah.
here? I mean, I just got to
I've been like a cool guy forever, yeah.
What is this all about? No, but I think, when my kids, I told my kids at a very young age, I said, I'll take you anywhere you want to go in the world when you turn 14. It's got to be a third world country and no hotels. That was the deal. So it was an outward bound kind of an experience.
Yeah.
And I took my son to Africa. We spent 5 weeks in Africa and hiked over 600 miles.
Wow.
I got him on we were almost stampeded by water buffalo and almost killed, and took him to the top of the Neath Gorge, and he climbed about 200 feet down the face with a guy that had climbed Mount McKinley. And I was like, man, I'm going to be in trouble
This
when I
seems a
get
little
out of
sketch.
there. Took my oldest daughter to Eastern Europe right after Perestroika and Glasnost had taken place, and she really wanted to see what that was all about. And we experienced Russia, the Soviet Union then firsthand. And,
Oh, wow.
Yep, that was
Yeah.
it was an eye-opening
Like
experience.
in the Yeltsin years, virtually.
Gorbachev and
And
Yeltsin,
Gorbachev and-
yep.
yeah.
And that was a great experience for her and for me. And my youngest I took to Ecuador, and we hiked through the Andes for about 2.5 weeks and hiked through the Amazon for about 2.5 weeks. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite stories there, we were on the Coca River in Ecuador, but it's right by Colombia, and we could see the gunboats running up and down that were running drugs, and that was an eye-opener. And then the skies opened up, and it probably rained 8 or 10 inches in an hour. The skies just opened up,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so the river rose, and we were isolated on this little
Oh.
peninsula, and we couldn't, we were isolated.
You're stuck.
We couldn't get off. Well, we had to get off, and so we waded across this peninsula, and there are caiman and other really dangerous critters in this water. And just talking her into it, like, you put the back on top of your head, we got to go. There's
Yeah.
just no choice.
There is another option.
And seeing her muster that up and conquer that, conquer the fear, and get to the other side was a terrific life experience.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
Ginger, I wish we had 2 more hours, honestly. Like, I feel like we really could spend plenty of time
We have lots of
philosophizing and-
philosophies. Yeah.
we haven't even barely had, we've just been storytelling, not philosophizing, but it's already 5:10, so I want to respect your time. But maybe, like, is there anything that you'd like to share with, actually, one of the segments I haven't touched on yet that we sometimes do is, like, advice for the next generation. And I think especially as a woman that became a leader before women leaders were popular. Do you have some thoughts into this space where we're at, especially for ladies, young Ava, even if you want to personalize it? Like, what do I do with my life? Like, I'm here, I'm 20, I'm producing a podcast, I'm taking classes, but like, how do I figure it out?
Well, I'll tell you, what I tell all young people, and I do have the opportunity to speak at a lot of business schools or with women executives, and I still do some of that. And I always say the same thing. Number one, pick your boss, not your job. And especially, I think, for someone who may be more unusual in that role. So whether you're too young or you're a minority or you speak a different language or you're not part of the standard cast, that very first job, those early job choices are very formative. So you can imagine that if you don't fit in and your boss doesn't really want you and you're treated badly, when you're brand new, you don't know if it's about you or if it's a situation. And so your self-esteem, your confidence, your courageousness, your ability to take risks can get severely altered very young in your career because you worked for the wrong person, a jerk, an uninformed person, maybe someone who was nice but didn't know how to be a good coach. And so I had the benefit of working for an amazing man early in my career. And actually, I think I could give you a list of 9 incredible. I never worked for a woman, only men. But the great experiences, the tough feedback, the coaching I got, and the courage they demonstrated helping me grow when I was unusual and didn't fit and there weren't any and I was the only and I was the first and all the things that get in the way of performance. Having a good boss made all the difference. And I have 20 stories someday when we have nothing else to talk about. I'll tell you about some things that courageous men did that demonstrated to me what true leadership looks like and also called me to be all that I could be because they had taken a risk on me. Yeah. And so that's one piece of advice, which is pick your boss, not your job, especially when you're young. But I'd say your whole life, your boss has disproportionate influence on you. And all the HR research in the world says that you can work for a great company, but if your boss is a jerk, you still have a terrible experience and probably quit, right? So that's important. The second thing is we just had this conversation with a young man who was sitting at the bar at the Cash with his mom, and he doesn't know what he wanted to do, and he wanted to talk to Jack about insurance, and then he's doing something else. And I said, of course you don't know what you want to do. How could you? You've never done it.
You haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, you haven't done anything except go to school and do what you were told to do. So now you're of your own free will, but you don't know what to do. Of course you don't. Go do something. Whether it's a good experience or a bad, a good boss or a bad, take notes, learn from it. What did I love? What motivated me? What did I hate? What was I good at? What did not know but I'm interested in? And then do another thing, and then do another thing, and then do another thing. And somewhere along the way, you will learn what you are and what you're made of and what you're capable of, and that will be you. And then you will apply it to maybe 100 more things. So my dad worked for the post office after the military, accumulated service of 43 years. That's what my dad did. I've had 14 jobs, I think, the last time I counted. The next generation will have 40. And so learn. Say yes, do it, learn from it, and move on. And I think if you try to work for a good person and you are in a learning mode, the sky's the limit, period. Go do it.
I dig that. Thank you. Jack, anything to append the closing here?
No, I think what Ginger said, we're pretty much aligned there. I preach to people who ask me for advice when they're young, pick your boss,
Yeah.
Pick your job. But I think more than anything, this generation in particular, we always said, figure out what you love to do and then go find a way to make a living at it. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's just, as Ginger was saying, go try things and then figure out what you like. Oh, I really like reinsurance. It's like, what?
Right.
Go get a life.
Yeah, I
right?
never would have heard about that,
It was
right?
it was spectacular, the relationships, but I was intellectually stimulated. I love the competitiveness of it. It was just a great career. So go try things and find something you really like and then commit to it. Don't be so damn caught up in this idea of having a balanced life. A balanced life is pretty bloody boring. Balanced life doesn't mean you can't work 48 hours straight and never go to bed and not see your family for 2 days. But then you take time away from your job and you balance your life by immersing yourself in your family to make up for it. But don't be afraid to immerse yourself in something, commit to it, and get exhausted. Be exhausted because of what you're doing and learn from it. It is so much fun to immerse yourself in something like that. And you learn so much.
We are a world of shallow people in some ways, and so that perseverance and
Peyton
working hard.
Manning said something that caught my attention a number of years ago. He said it takes you about 10,000 hours to learn how to be a quarterback in the
Right.
NFL. And he said after about 15,000 hours, you start to change the game. And I thought, oh, how much fun is that?
Yeah.
That's really something.
I used to tell people for years that after 5 years in banking, because I was a small business banker, was my background, that I thought I was pretty good at. And then after 10 years in banking, I was like, oh, damn, I was so not good at it after 5 years. And, that's part of the journey.
More to learn.
Recognize where you've been. And I'm not as smart as you guys, so it's harder
Yeah,
for
right.
me. Yeah.
Hardly true.
I appreciate you guys being here.
We appreciate you too. This is a great program.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for the work.
Appreciate you much. Godspeed.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah.